How you doing? Yeah, it looks like we're live. So, this is the title of this one. The success is built on failure. It's pretty obvious. We've might have come across that before. So I'm reading this book, Black Box Thinking, Matthew Sayed. £2 from a charity shop. I wanted to read this for a bit, and there's a section in here that I'm going to base this chat on, and it's based on this chapter 3, the paradox of success. And it talks about there was a famous flight. Well, it's comparing two flights here. The first flight that it's comparing was a disaster, basically. Previous flight where I can't remember what the flight number was, but there was a certain flight in aviation history which there's a way that the wings come down, and it explains in the book. Sorry, the wings, the wheels come down, to land. And there's a way that it tells you that they're locked in and you're ready to land. And something happened where the wheels actually came down, but the pilot couldn't see, and the team, they couldn't tell whether these wheels had come down. So the pilot decided to sort of circle in the air, we've got loads of fuel, we'll just work it out, what's happening, troubleshoot it. Anyway, cut a long story short, the purpose of this was the co-pilot was warning the pilot that the fuel was running out, and that, and the pilot were kind of ignoring it. There's this kind of hierarchy where the pilot doesn't always listen to the co-pilot because you've got this sort of authority hierarchy. Happens in many industries. And sometimes the junior person can not speak out when they see something just out of fear of, the hierarchy. So the co-pilot mentioned it. Fuel's running out. The pilot said, yeah, said it a couple of times, mentioned it a few times. And when it got really critical, the co-pilot didn't properly enforce the issue. And then the plane crashed and it was a disaster and all that. I think 8 people died and it was pretty bad. But then it talks about another one. So the thing is, the wheels had actually come down, right? And the plane was fine, but they couldn't tell with the fail-safe systems. And they could have just landed it safely. But anyway, it was a bit of a disaster, and that pilot went on to have a terrible after effects of that. And then this section here in chapter 3 talks about, it's US Airways flight 1549, the one that crashed in the Hudson River. Pilot Sully, Sullinger, whatever he's called, Sully, this famous pilot that became like an international star because he landed this plane in the river, and it was an emergency. I think when they took off from the airport, geese flew into the engines, blew the engines up. Plane was crashing into going down over a city, nowhere to land. Sully just went, right, we're going to land it in the river. Landed it in the river, everyone got out, that were fine. And he became a national hero, and it says here, like, I can't remember what it was, where I think after it, he ended up being like a national hero, and President-elect Obama brought him on for at the inauguration and everything, and blah, blah, blah. He was made out to be a hero when the idea being is that both pilots had roughly the same knowledge, roughly the same skill. One ended badly, one ended didn't. One ended successfully. And what was the secret in why one was successful and one wasn't? Well, it was literally lessons learned from past failures, right? And Sully had the benefit of having that flight a lot later on, where there was more feedback from failures. So a lot of things had got corrected. Even though the pilots had the same skill, Sully had the benefit of his flight was with more learning. So this is why, success is always built on failure. And I think where's that quote? Right, there's a great quote, because he was interviewed, right, on He said in an interview afterwards, you know, after it was made famous and at the inauguration and everything, he went on, and this is what he said in this interview. It's absolutely brilliant. He says, everything we know in aviation, every rule in the rule book, every procedure we have, we know because someone else died. We purchased at great cost lessons literally bought with blood that we have to preserve as institutional knowledge and pass on to the succeeding generations. We cannot have the moral we cannot have the moral failure to forgetting these lessons that we have. Sorry, I'm not even reading this correctly. We cannot have the moral failure of forgetting these lessons and have to relearn them. So I found that to be really powerful, especially that last line here. We cannot have the moral failure of forgetting these lessons and have to relearn them. What he's saying there is, you know, everything that he has in aviation, the reason why he was successful is from past failures. Other people had to die for that, right? Which is pretty bad. But it's like, it's quite humble really, you know, and his last line here, we cannot have the moral failure of forgetting these lessons and have to relearn them. That is so important. It's like, we have to learn from every mistake that we make, right? And we can't fail to forget them. Because if we do, this is like, you know, the message here is, if you go through life and just ignoring your failures, you know, because there's all sorts of things that can happen, you know, you can kind of blank out failure and just ignore it and all that kind of thing. And if you don't learn from failure, then, you know, you're doing yourself a disservice there. You know, you're only inviting problems. And what Sully's saying is the reason why he was successful was simply because he recognised that everything that he had in his book, you know, because they have this kind of, when they're in trouble, the plane's going down, they have a debugging, there's like a book of diagnosing fault codes and procedures. All that knowledge there has been written from past failures. And to acknowledge that he's almost, it's very humble. It's like, he was no more skilled than other pilots that had died in the past. It's because he had that book, that knowledge documented, and of all the past failures. Thank you very much for the sub. I love that comment. But it is a good message, you know. And right, what I want to talk about now is how this relates to what you can do. So in the normal life, I don't know if you're a pilot, then yeah, of course, right? You know, you may benefit from all that, or some other industry. I know that things like not just aviation, things like car manufacture, you know, the amount of because you know, car manufacturers spend a lot of money on continuous improvement and improving on failure. And I think you should. I mean, I do in my business. We've got a process for collecting, like, you know, it's a continuous improvement process. So we get feedback from clients, why we didn't win a contract, or if they're dissatisfied, what went wrong. You know, it's always important to collect feedback. But yeah, you know, many industries do this, you know, like I say, car manufacturing, they always document all the failures and then they put it back into the next lot. Now, in the normal life, what I do obviously is journaling, right? And one of the best things about journaling is a reflection, right? So what I do at the end of every day, there's a section like, you know, I think it's how can I improve, right? So the reflection is that you're gonna write down all your wins for the day or things that happened that are noteworthy. Then the last bit is how can I improve? Now, the reason why that's really important is because at the end of the day, you write down, it's like a bit of corrective action or a bit of continuous improvement. You're just going to write a couple of lines about how the day could have gone better, right? And that's just that day. And this is really important because if you're using something like a journal or you're just writing these things down in a notebook or even in your computer. I mean, I prefer pen to paper. I just think it bakes in the brain better. But if you do that right before bed and make it the last thought that you think about before you go to sleep, that's going to really bake in your brain. You're going to sleep on it. I think there's a lot of science out there. This is what I read, right? It's really important that you make your reflection on the day the last thought that you do before you go to sleep. And then another thing, so that's really good. Then your brain can sort of process that while you sleep. Very powerful. Another thing that I do, once you finish, I've got one here that I've finished, right? 6 months, this one, my previous one. And what I do is I'll just spend, say, a Saturday morning going through, you know, if you have a look at this, I've got like literally every single page I've written in here, so I know exactly what I did on every day. And I'll just spend a Saturday morning just reading through this bottom section, this reflection. How can I improve? And also the habit tracker for every week. And what I'm looking for is that continuous improvement. So it might be looking at the topics that I've got in my habit tracker, right? If it's about making sure that I, clean up my diet or something like this, or making sure that I get to bed. A big one for me at the minute is trying to improve my sleep. So I'm going to put an item in my habit tracker about getting to bed, before say 10:30, making sure I get at least 7 hours, ideally 8 hours. And then I'm going to tick off that. And the idea being is as you go through the weeks, you should be able to see an improvement in that. If not, then you've not improved. So that's what I'm looking for. The other thing, sorry, I just had to get rid of that notification. The other thing is this section at the bottom here of every day. How can I improve? And this is where you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to write the things that didn't go well. This is like your bad habits. So here now, should have got to bed early, right? Exactly what I said. I'm trying to work on my sleep. I'm trying to get to, I know we all want to achieve loads of things in life, but I've got to get to bed before a certain time so I can get up and train early, right? And then there's other things, it's almost like, no screen time, whatever it might be in your life. And this is a section, so if you've got a bad habit, it could be worse than that, like drinking or smoking or something, or whatever. I'm not saying that those things are bad, but you might want to quit them, and this is where you would record it. So every 6 months, I'll sit down on a Saturday and read that bottom section about how you can improve and read the habit tracker. So thinking about a journal, it's like, this is your document because you're capturing it in the moment every day if you journal every day. It's a document for all your successes and all your failures and all that continuous improvement. So whilst we're not all, star pilots and, saving 200 people on a plane and things, we don't get that opportunity. We just have normal lives. We can still become more successful just from learning from all our failures, writing them down like I do, and then reflecting on them and making sure you're learning the lessons so that when you then, pick up your next journal and you fill it out, you at the back of it, you've got everything that you've achieved in this journal, and then you go to your new one, you're going to create some new goals, which might be the next level of what you've been working on, what you've been trying to improve. You may have got some results by 6 months or up. And then you can double down and keep reinforcing that, keep the continuous improvement going. So yeah, that's it. Right, I do have to shoot now, unfortunately. Thank you for listening. If you want a journal, just look in the link down below. Go on the website, get one ordered. But I do have to shoot because I've got to nip out. I'm getting a shower, shooting out. So thank you very much. Don't forget, like the video, subscribe, and thank you for your comments. Which one is tough, living life or dying early? I don't know. Which one is tough, living life or dying early? Well, it depends. I mean, I would imagine dying early is living life, but personally, I don't want to die early. I think you should look after your body and your mind. I think living life to the full is respecting your body, looking after yourself. Yes, take some risks, right? You got to do to experience life. Accept a bit of failure, but just don't make stupid decisions, that's all. So I think it's a bit of both. Where are you from? I'm from Pakistan. Manchester, UK. Yeah. Right, I do have to shoot. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the comments, and yeah, see you all next time.